Hello and welcome to this training video. In this video, we will learn how to set up a Planet 9 instance with an Azure AD authentication into the system. In order to make P9 use Azure's Active Directory authentication, we need to create a link between P9 and Azure. Essentially, the process works like this. Neptune generates and provides a certificate to Azure. Azure registers these details against an Azure application and provides a unique set of information back to Neptune. The first configuration to do is within the Azure portal. You need to register an application. So, within the Azure portal, select the Azure Active Directory service. Open App Registrations on the left. Press plus New Registration and provide a name for the system. Under Supported Account Types, select Multi-Tenant. Now provide the URI redirect path. This is the URL or IP of your system, followed by /public/Azure_redirect.html. After the authentication is done, this is where the application will redirect with the token. Finally, press Register. Next, we need to add the certificate that we will generate from within P9. Go to Certificates and Secrets on the left within the new application. And here is where we will upload the P9 certificate. Now, in a new tab or window, switch over to P9. Open Connectivity, Security, Certificates. Press Add and give the certificate a name. Here I will use Azure AD Bearer. Under Attributes, you can adjust these depending on the configuration of the authentication and security layers within your particular Azure instance, but normally the default values are standard. The certificate must be set to self-signed, meaning the P9 server must be HTTPS. Provide a validity timeframe and provide the subject details. For this example, I will use Neptune AD, Neptune Software, IT, Oslo, and Norway. The issuer fields will be automatically generated when the certificate is generated. Now hit Generate. The keys will then be populated with the certificate, private, and public key. Download the .sir file, and this is just a concatenation of the three keys. This is now what we will import into Azure. So, head back to the Azure window. Within Certificates and Secrets, under the Certificates submenu, upload the .sir file. You'll then be able to see the thumbprint, start date, expiry date, and ID for the certificate. Since P9 wants something in return, we need to generate a client secret. In the same interface, hit plus New Client Secret. Give it a name and choose an expiry timeframe. After adding, there will be a value and ID for the client secret. We will now copy 4 key details from Azure into P9. So, copy the value of the secret you just generated, jump up one level back to the application within Azure, and copy the application client ID, copy the directory tenant ID, and next to the delete button, open endpoints, and finally copy the OpenID connect metadata document URL. Now, jump back into P9, under Settings, System, Authentication, add and select Azure AD. Give it a name. Here I use Neptune AD Bearer. Set Active and Show on Login Page as true. Set the path to exactly Planet9-AD-Bearer. For the identity metadata, paste in the OpenID connect metadata endpoint URL. Paste in the tenant ID client ID, and client secret that we copied earlier as well. For the scope, include user.read, profile, OpenID, and offline_access, all separated by a space. These are the mandatory OpenID defined scopes, and they are important for the authentication to work. Next up, claims. This is the mapping between the data that is sent from Azure within the access token with a P9 user. Configuring this allows P9 to use the data from the token and assign it to the user account. The most common ones are name, mapping to user field name, preferred username, mapping to email, and preferred username, mapping to username. So in this example, the name from the Azure token will be mapped to the name of the P9 user, and the preferred username value will be mapped to the P9 user's email and username. Next, auto assignment. If you have roles set up for your users within Active Directory, and you have roles with exactly the same name within the P9 instance, automatically P9 will assign those Azure roles to the P9 user. For this to occur, you must leave the auto assign fields empty, and you must ensure your Azure is set up to pass the roles within the ID token. Adding a role, such as admin here for example, will force P9 to give any user that logs in via this Azure AD authentication method the admin role within the system. The same goes for departments, which are the groups within P9. If no roles are added here in the auto assignment section, and no roles are configured for the user accounts within Azure, or they're not passed within the ID token, when the user logs in to P9, they won't see anything other than the help tool, since they'll have no role within the system. Finally, the custom script section allows JavaScript functions to be run to do anything outside of the standard configuration. When all the details are complete, press OK to add the method. Finally, save the system settings, then restart the P9 instance. After the restart, you'll see the Active Directory option in the login screen. When submitting a login request, there'll be two network requests. The first is the call to Azure, and in the response will be the access token, the ID token, and the refresh token, along with the scope defined in the authentication. The second request is to the P9 instance. For debugging purposes, you can copy the tokens from the network request and paste them into a website, jwt.io, which allows you to decode and verify the token data. Once you have logged in successfully, you can visit Security, Users, and under the Azure AD tab, you should see the new registered user. Note that the username, name, and email are populated by the claim mapping that was set up earlier. Within the role for the user, you should see either the role set for the account within Azure, if you haven't set up any auto assignments, or you'll see whatever role was specified within the auto assignment setup. If you already registered Azure AD users on the system, and you add more roles to their account within Azure, or within the authentication auto assignment, when they log in, it will append any new roles to the accounts alongside the existing ones. The roles for the user could then be used to control their access to almost every aspect of Planet 9, from cockpit tools to individual apps or launchpads.